Mick O'Dwyer, let me ask you first of all whether you miss football.
Well, I suppose it's only natural that I would miss it. Have been involved in the game for 35 years, so it's going to be a very big break for me, all right. But still, I'm going to be involved with my own club in Waterville, and I will be able to spend quite a lot of time now with the local players there, and hoping I'll be able to get a commitment from those guys like I got from Kerry. And well, if I would, I think we could go a long way in Kerry football in Waterville.
I want to return to that later on, but tell me first of all about the decision to retire. How did you arrive at it? How painful was it?
Well, amazingly enough, it wasn't painful at all. You know, I thought about it. I've been thinking about it since 1982. First of all, when I took the job in 1975, I took it just to do it just for the 1 year in 1975. But then, of course, it snowballed from there. We won the 75 All-Ireland, and we were beaten by Dublin in 76 and 77. And being beaten in those 2 years, I suppose, you know, I kind of got really stuck in it. I said, I must stay there now until we get back on the winning trail again. And then it happened in 78. We came and we beat Dublin pretty well in that final. And we went on then to win 4 in a row after that, as you know. Then we lost the famous one in 1982. Offaly beat us in that famous final. I think that was the biggest setback I ever had in my life.
It was your worst moment in football. Was it the worst moment of your life?
The worst moment, I would even say, in my life, to be honest. And for about 3 months after, you know, there was withdrawal symptoms there, as if I had been on drink and getting off it or whatever. But then, I don't know, from there on, then we kind of made a decision that we stay together for another while. We were beaten by Cork then in the Munster final the following year, 30 seconds from the end. They got a goal. Amazingly, in those 2 finals, we lost both of them. The All-Ireland final in 82, 90 seconds from the end, and we lost the one in 83, 30 seconds from the end. So, I mean, you know, things weren't just going well for us at that period. But then we made a decision. We all got together in September of 83, and we made up our mind that we were going to have one go for the centenary year. And we won the league and we won the championship in 84. And when we won that one, then I suppose it was a case of, well, we'll go continue until we're defeated anyway. So we won in 85 and we won in 86. And then in 1987, I think Mikey Sheehy was captain, and that kind of kept me going that year. The following year, Pat Spillane came through with Kinmare to win the Kerry Championship. And then I had to continue, and I did continue for that year again. And then the following year, I don't know what kept me going the following year. We had a bit of a problem in the Munster final, and there was a big controversy over players that should have been switched and what have you. And there was a few people around who wanted to get rid of me at that stage. And I suppose I just made up my mind that these guys weren't going to get rid of me that easily, so I stayed on for that. And then when the championship was over this year, I had made up my mind in January of this year that this was going to be the last one, definitely.
31 and a half counties, I think you said at one stage, wanted to beat you. Who are these extraordinary people who wanted to get rid of you and forced you to stay on thereby?
Well, I made that statement to the team, I suppose, to motivate them more than any other thing. But I honestly believe that within Kerry that there was quite a lot of people who were getting, you know, they didn't like to see us having so much success. And a lot of people would say that it would be better if it went around a little bit. But I can tell you, when you're out of the championship in Kerry for a few years, they don't say those things. They want to get back quickly. And then when Cork beat us over the last few years, people were saying, well, there's something radically wrong here. But of course, it's going to take a little bit of time to get the thing moving again in Kerry.
Well, I want to ask you about that also. But are you saying that there actually are really, there were knockers in Kerry? They knocked their own team?
Well, I would say that, you know, you had a lot of people in Kerry who won All-Irelands over the years, and those people, I suppose, were getting a little bit upset that some other players were coming along and winning 7 and 8 All-Ireland medals, and guys down the line had 4 and 5, and I suppose in a way they weren't feeling well about it, and I think they wanted us, they didn't like to see us win too many anyway, you know. It was going on and going on and going on. There were some guys there that could have won 9 and 10 All-Irelands, you know.
Well, now, coming back to the question of the future of Kerry, are the great days of Kerry gone for good, or are there young fellows waiting there to come on who are just as good as the great team of yore?
Well, I think we're back to 1975 again, when I took over the team. At that period, Cork had won 6 minor All-Irelands from 1966 to 1974. And it looked pretty bleak when I took over the team in early 1975. Meath had beaten us in the quarter-final of the National League. They beat us by something in the region of 12, 13 pints on that occasion. And a lot of people in Kerry thought that things were going to be very bad for years to come, because Cork looked to be the team that were going to come through at that period. As I said, they had won 6 minor All-Irelands in 8 years, and they looked very, very good. But we had won an under-21 title in 1973, and it was with some of those players and an under-21 team that I trained myself in 74. I got together a bunch of young players. I would say that 80% of them were under the age of 22. And we decided on a schedule of training, which I think has become famous now. And we worked very, very hard over 12 months. And we worked so hard, as a matter of fact, for that championship that we trained for 27 consecutive nights. And it's now that we won the All-Ireland title that year, of course.
Purely as a result of this extraordinary regime of training, was it? Was that the secret of it?
Well, I'd say it was, yeah. There's no doubt it was because of the amount of hard work that we put into the game. It was never known in Kerry in my time to train, you know, on consecutive nights. I trained under some great trainers in my time, Dr. Eamon O'Sullivan and Jackie Lyne and Gerald Sullivan and Johnny Welch and John Joe Sheehy and all those people. I was involved and I trained under those people, and I learned quite a lot from all of those people. And I played myself, of course, for Kerry for 18 years, and it was because of all the practical experience, I suppose, that I garnered over all those years, that I made a decision that when I would take over a team, I would change the system completely and totally. I went to England and had a look at a few of the top first division teams there in pre-season training. That's something I've never said before. I did actually, and I learned quite a lot over there. And when I got back and when I got charge of the Kerry senior football team, I worked as I thought best with those players, and we trained. I remember being in Killarney before the Munster final of 1975, and as I said, we had done something like 27 consecutive nights, and there were some of the older people in there, old Kerry players who had won a lot of All-Ireland medals and what have you. And the general chat at the time was that this team are going to be over the hill, they're going to be overtrained, and they're not going to be at the races against Cork. But I had a system which I believed would always get players right. I generally scaled down my training the 2 weeks before a game, and I always found that players would be generally fresh on the day. And in 1975, we beat Cork. We beat them by 7 pints, I think, on the day, and beat them well. And they were a very, very good Cork side. They had won an All-Ireland in 1973. They were beaten by Dublin in 74. And they looked to be the team of all the talents, actually. That was a better Cork team, I think, than the present Cork side. But anyway, we beat them well on that occasion, and then it's history now. We went on to win the All-Ireland issue.
Well, now it's interesting that you should reveal at this late stage that you learned some of your tricks, at any rate, from professional soccer players and professional trainers in Britain, which brings us onto the question of professionalism, because your attitude really didn't stop short of being professional. Would you like to see professionalism in the GAA?
Well, I was never an advocate of full-time professionalism. I don't think it would be good for the game. But I would like to see a semi-professional approach to the game. I think they have that in Australian rules, and I think it's working pretty well. I think it's not right, and I think it's wrong where players are out every weekend. They're foregoing overtime, quite a lot of them. And I think it's totally wrong that they're out of pocket because of their involvement in Gaelic football. And I think it would only be right and fitting that players should be reimbursed for out-of-pocket money anyway, definitely, or out-of-pocket money they lose on wages or whatever. I think that would be a step in the right direction to reimburse them.
But that's all. You wouldn't pay them anything.
I wouldn't actually pay them, no, I wouldn't actually pay them as such. But what I would like to see is that players would go on television and advertise, give them goods of whatever. And if they get whatever money for doing those things, fair enough, let them have it.
The best of luck to them, you would say.
The best of luck to them, that's true.
What about, though, the business of players going to New York or Boston on a Friday to play a match on a Sunday and coming back and being paid for it? Because they are most assuredly being paid for it, are they not?
Well, they tell us they're not actually being paid. They get expenses, so you can...
But we know different.
Yeah, we can work that out, whatever way you like. They're definitely getting money of some sort anyway. There's no doubt about it. I see nothing wrong with it. And I totally disagree with players being suspended for going to play in New York. I think players go to New York. I think they're promoting our games in the United States, and I think they should be free to go and come as they like. I mean, our game is supposed to be an amateur organisation, and if players are not getting paid, surely they should have freedom of movement. I mean, professional soccer players that I can see can come to Ireland, or they can go to Nigeria, or go to Germany, or go wherever they like to play exhibition games. But seemingly our Gaelic players just can't do that. But of course they have come up with a rule now, and they say that New York is part of the association, and that they must abide by the rules of the association in this country, but they seem to have their own rules over there all the time.
Coming back, Mick, to the business of motivating young players, you say you train for 27. Is it much more difficult nowadays because of various distractions to motivate young players, or is it easier?
Well, I think it's getting harder, you know, day by day. There's no doubt whatever about that.
Why?
Well, you have so many other attractions, you know. I mean, the social scene in Ireland is changing all the time. And there are a lot more pressure on young men today who get married. You know, they have mortgages on houses and hire purchase on cars and all that type of thing. But what the biggest problem that we have in Kerry at the moment is immigration. It's unbelievable from my part of the country, unbelievable. All around the South Division there now, there's young fellas leaving our area. It's unbelievable. Our curate last Sunday week, he made a sermon in Waterville, and he has been in our parish for 4 years. And in that 4 years, he told us on last Sunday week that 350 young people left our parish. And our parish, there's only a population of something in the region of 900 to 1,000 people. So that will show you the mass immigration that's out of our area. It's unbelievable.
And that's the biggest problem you have.
That's the biggest problem we have in Kerry at the moment that I can see it.
And there's nothing you can do about it.
Well, there isn't anything that we can do that much, but I don't know what can be done. We listen to the governments of this country over the past number of years telling us about getting the balance of payments right in this country. But gee, surely the first thing we should be able to do is to get employment for our people. They talk about tourism and the promotion of such. I think the Ring of Kerry is one of the most famous routes in this country, and the state of the roads on the Ring of Kerry, especially from Killarney to Waterville, is unbelievably bad, and they haven't put money into that route in 10 years. Surely if they're talking about promoting tourism in this country, that's one of the places that money should be really put into, and put in a proper highway in there.
Does it not persuade you, now that you've given up football at county level, to go into politics and do something about it yourself?
Well, I gave it serious consideration there at one stage about 4 years ago, but there was another, that we had the O'Donoghue family in Carsavine who were highly involved in the Fianna Fáil organisation down the years, and there was a lot of pressure put on me at that stage to go run for a given party, and well, I gave it serious consideration, but I think I would have had a lot of problems within my own area, and I decided against it. And well, we got a man from our area and he's been elected in there now, so we're hoping that things might happen maybe within the next few years.
But is that the end of politics for you?
Well, it's something I always have at the back of my mind, but that's something you can never tell, you know. You never know when a decision would come along that I may, but I'm getting on a little bit now, and it's more than unlikely that I won't go forward.
But if you got the nomination, do you think you would, if you were sure that you'd get the nomination?
Well, if I was sure at that stage, I think I would have ran, yeah.
And even still?
Well, I would give it due consideration.
Well, whatever about politics, football wasn't the totality of your life. You also have 2 hotels and a garage over the years, and you have a now grown family. But I wanted to ask you, there must have been very severe strain on your family life because of the time that you had to spend on the football.
Well, I suppose I was very lucky that I had a very tolerant wife, and she was involved in the hotel business, and she was the woman, I think, that really got me into the hotel business. I was in the motor trade when we got married, and I was quite happy to remain there, but my wife, Mary, always wanted to get into the hotel business. She was trained in that, actually. So we got into that, and I was in the motor business from my youth. I went to school at the local vocational school in Waterville and came through, did my group step there. I went from there then into a local garage and trained as a mechanic. And when I finished there, then after about 2 years, the owner of that garage wanted to sell, and I bought it from him. And then I moved on from there, and I developed a fairly good business there and got a main Opel agency. Reg Armstrong actually was a great friend of mine at that period. He used to come to Waterville regularly at that period, fishing. As you know, Waterville is a famous fishing area. Suppose one of the best freshwater fishing areas in the country. But he used to come regularly to Waterville, and he persuaded me at that stage to take the main Opel agency, which I did. And I sold Opel for years and years. But then when I got involved in football, I must say this, that I neglected my garage. There's no question or doubt whatever about it. But then we got into the hotel business, and I had to give quite a bit of time to that. And I made a decision then, about 7 years ago, I leased the garage. I got out of the motor trade completely and into the hotel business, more into football, I'm afraid, than into the hotel business. But as I said, I was very lucky that my wife was so involved in it, and then my kids started to get involved as well.
I accepted, and I'm sure that she was indeed very tolerant, but surely at some stage she must have said, will you forget about that football for one day?
Yes, it's amazing, and many an occasion she said it. You know, she was only in Crow Park on one occasion in her life, and she was never in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, never in Killarney. She had just about a passing interest in the game, and that was about all. But good job, I often said, if she was as involved as I was, there wouldn't be any business, or there wouldn't be any home life at all.
Let me bring you on to the problems. We've touched on professionalism there within the GAA, and you've made clear your attitude to that. But you have also made clear in the past your attitude to the way the GAA is run. It doesn't have your wholehearted admiration on the people who run it.
Well, I think they're becoming a little bit, they're improving, I would say. You know, and they have improved over the past 4 or 5 years, I think. Liam Mulvihill, in fairness to him, has done a reasonably good job. And the man before him, Sean O'Shea, in my book, was one of the best men the organisation had.
What are the problems, though? What are the problems within the GAA?
The problems, I think, that we're over-democratic in the organisation, and we have too many committees in there in Crow Park. And I think that applies in everything in this country, with government committees and whatever, and the same thing applies in Crow Park. There are so many different committees in there, you know, and when you go into Crow Park, you would know where to go or what to do or anything else. So I think maybe if we had a couple of people in charge, maybe about 3 or 4 people in there, and let them run the organisation and let them run them professionally. I think that's what we need within the organisation, and cut out a lot of this stuff. There are too many people going into Crow Park who in my book are over the hill. They become chairman of county boards, and they become chairman of provincial councils, and then when they get on in years they're moved into Crow Park. I think that's a wrong system altogether. I think what we need in Crow Park are young guys of 13, 14, 50 years of age. Get them in there, and they're the guys I think that could run the organisation properly. Because as you know, when you're in any job for too long, you're going to get stale. And I think it would only be good and fitting that they change the system of recruiting people for Crow Park.
And would you recruit professionals, or would you recruit young people who have played the games?
Well, I think, as I mentioned a while ago, and I would like to see that the game would become semi-professional. And it is professional I suppose, in Crow Park. I mean, there are something like 20 or 24 people in there, and they're full-time employees. So when that happened, in my book, I think our game is no more, not an amateur game anymore. I mean, you had professionals running amateurs, so I don't think that's on.
And most of them are not necessary, you would say.
Well, I think we could do with less, maybe.
Mm. What about the game itself now, Mick? There is a huge problem, is there not, with the rules of the game? For instance, at the centre of it, as one who has played it previously myself, I always found you just could not dispossess a man without potentially fouling him, and it depended entirely on the referee's discretion. You never knew where you are.
Well, whether we like it or not, there isn't such a thing as a tackling Gaelic football, and there never was, but people would try to tell you there was, and there wasn't in my book. That's the big problem in Gaelic football, in and around the tackle. I was on a rules revision committee about 10 years ago, and needless to say, they didn't bother their head in Crow Park even to implement the ones that we recommended. And the one thing that we wanted to get implemented at the time was the curtailment of the solo run. Just one solo, one hop, or even 2 solos and a hop, and get the player to release the ball. Now, we had a big discussion on it actually, and we thought, would we bring in an Australian rules tackle or get the player in possession to release? Now, you must get either one or the other. But what we have in our game, we have an in-between thing, you see, whereas you can pull and drag, and referees are